ironically, the greatest challenge and struggle that I faced turned out to be probably one of the best things that could have happened to me, because it has allowed me to connect with students in a way that very few instructors actually can do in this industry.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. What's up, my friends? Welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career. This is conversation number 111. I think it's like episode maybe 180 something already. Don't hold me to it, but it's a lot, and I'm super pumped that I can keep on making these and that you all are listening and gaining value from these, and I'm continuing to have just amazing, incredible, awesome, just so full, like so chocked full of value guests, and this is one of them. My guest today is the one and only Mr. Jeff Gonzales, and he's a former Navy SEAL, and he's the founder of Trident Concepts. I had a wonderful conversation with this guy. It was so fun learning more about him and how he got into what he did post-Navy and how his transition was. Spoiler alert, it was a little bit tough for him, but he describes how the fact that it was tough actually became a good thing. So it's such a good mindset to have, like understanding that things may suck at the time, but if you approach it from this mindset of, well, what can I learn from this? How can I make this better? Or how can I approach this better next time? Then you might be surprised and you might realize that that may have been a blessing in disguise. Sounds a little bit cliche, but it's so true. So get your mind ready for this incredible conversation. I really enjoyed it. Remember, you can find this conversation and all the other contemplations. The contemplations are just me. I hit a slew of topics, and those are only on audio, and all of those are on kristoflewis.com/podcast or on your favorite podcast listening application. So without further ado, let's get into another phenomenal podcast conversation number 111 with Jeff Gonzales. Welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I'm thrilled. I'm excited. Like we were saying, it's always good to see what kind of dialogue we develop as we move forward.
That's the beauty of these things, you know, like we were just saying, it's a little bit structured. We kind of have these guidelines, but I'm a huge fan of the organic podcast and seeing where they go, because I feel like if I lock myself down, there's so much of unexplored territory that never gets adventured in. I'm so into that. So yeah, man, pretty appreciate it. For those of us that don't know too much about you, or is first time hearing about you, do you mind giving us like a little introduction and background on who you are?
Not at all. So I was born and raised here in Texas. I left for the Navy right out of high school. Was very lucky that I had a fast track to the SEAL teams. I went to boot camp, A school, immediately to BUDS, Graduated from BUDS, and went to my SEAL team. I was lucky that I was young. I was a brand new guy that was thrust into a platoon that was filled with a lot of seniority, a lot of veteran guys. And we were tasked with some real world operations very early on. So this December, next month, I will be going up to Arlington to celebrate the 30-year invasion of Panama, Operation Just Cause. So yeah, that happens next month. So that was 30 years ago. Dang. So it's hard to believe that was 30 years ago. But yeah, I cut my teeth very early on. I still had Coronado sand in my camis when I deployed downrange to get it on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang, that's crazy. And yeah, 30 years flies. It's crazy.
It's all coming at me really fast all of a sudden.
What the hell is this? This is some made up number. I that's how it is. But when you're going that high speed, when you're doing all those things, like I said, I did 9 years in the Navy. So like that's pretty much a decade, and a decade is not a short amount of time. And I honestly, I remember the night I left the boot camp like it was yesterday. It's so weird.
Oh God, for sure. It does feel like it was yesterday in so many ways. When I was talking to my platoon commander, who was putting together or one of the folks that was putting together the kind of reunion of sorts, I was like, 30 years of trying to just wrap my head around that. It was hard to
Yeah.
figure that out. So I spent the better half of my adult life there. I left the Navy. I was very fortunate. I spent all my operational time on the East Coast,
Very
and
cool.
then I left the Navy after being a BUDS instructor out there on the West Coast. So I got both the East and the West Coast. I was both an operator and instructor. So I got a lot of different viewpoints from my career at that point. Then I left the Navy, and at first my intention was to get involved in the private sector, and I was
Okay.
jumped into an opportunity that was thrown at me without really putting much thought into what I was doing.
Sure.
For pretty much my entire up to that point adult life, everything was 100 miles an hour with my hair on fire. So there wasn't a lot of thought that I went, like mission planning was great. Mission planning I love to do. I could sit down there and plan the hell out of something. And then getting into the real world and trying to navigate in those new waters was quite the undiscovered territory for me. I mean, I really didn't know, like, I didn't understand how it worked in the real world, if you will.
Yeah.
So I left the Navy, went into what I just assumed was another command. I thought I was just going to another command, only it was in the civilian world. So I was like, this is gonna be easy. Turned out it wasn't quite so easy. In the meantime, while that's struggling, I was asked to go ahead and start doing some work overseas. So I kind of did that with the understanding that I didn't want to leave the Navy and still do the same job I was doing in the Navy, but do it out of the Navy.
Sure.
So it was one of those things that I did to pass the time. And what ended up happening was that I was one of the plank owners at Blackwater when they first stood up their operations overseas.
Okay, cool.
So that was very cool. And then about that time, things really were turning over for me on the private sector. I stood up my own company called Trident Concepts.
Yeah.
Been in business probably about 3 or 4 years, and we were doing really good. At the time, there wasn't another NSW guy in the industry. I was really the only one, and I was pretty fortunate that I could pick what I wanted as far as like who I wanted to work with. And I got a chance to work with some amazing units and groups and individuals. So it was really good. And then I started doing the work overseas, and it got to a point where my deployments overseas were conflicting with what I was doing back in CONUS, to the point where even though at that time we were making ridiculous daily rates, I mean, it was like the days of lore that everybody talked about. Like I was in on that and got a chance to really see the big paychecks. But I was actually losing money because Trident Concepts, I couldn't be in two places at one time. So that was kind of a tough thing. I eventually stopped doing that around 2009.
You stopped Blackwater?
Yeah, well, I stopped doing everything overseas.
Everything
at that
overseas.
point, I just kind of walked away from all of it, just because I couldn't. Like I said, if I was going to do that job, I would have rather have been doing that job in the Navy.
Yeah.
Because when you're in that, and that's a whole other discussion. But when you're in that world, there is no, you've got no backup. You've got no logistical support. You've got no QRF. You've got basically a very small footprint, which is good because you can kind of go unnoticed in a lot of cases. But you are on your own, and it's very much like the cowboy life. You're really out there in the frontier by yourself, like one ranger, one riot kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, when I finally decided to move on and focus exclusively with Trident Concepts, it was a good decision. There's many things that I miss about being in that environment. I do miss I miss the camaraderie that you develop with the teammates, even if they didn't. Like I was very lucky. That first crew that we put together was 90% team guys, and almost half of them were guys that I knew. Sure. So it was really easy. In any of those events, when you're thrust into that kind of a situation where you have to work with your teammates at such an intimate level, it's a different setting. So I miss that. I really do. We talk about that just last night. We had here at my home range, we did an event called Metal Mania, and we had a bunch of veterans. It was a veteran only event. We had a bunch of guys come out. We were just sitting there talking about things. And the way the event unfolded was they were thrust into a atmosphere that was very similar to what they experienced back in their military days. And each and every one of them was, I mean, engulfed by it. They're like, yes, this is what I miss. I miss this. You know, I don't know you, but I'm going to work hard with you and we're going to kick ass tonight. You know, it was just so awesome to see that, you know,
Sure.
all you got to do is sprinkle a little fairy dust and poof, there it goes. You know, it's that team environment.
Yeah,
so I missed that. I really did. But Trident Concepts was financially successful for me, and it has been. It continues to be successful for me. So
Awesome.
It was a good decision to go in that. You know, you can't. You know, I'm 51 years old now. I still work hard in my daily lives to maintain a certain. I'm very big on trying to set an example for everybody around me, and if I'm able to do it at this age, then everybody else should have no excuse why they can't do it at younger ages. So it was good. It was a good choice for me. Trident Concepts was gangbusting in those early years. When I focused on Trident Concepts, it was a great. It was awesome, and it was so different for me because even though I was a BUDS instructor working with BUDS students, they're not full-fledged operators. You know, they're not at that same level of mindset, conditioning, and experience. It was still a very unique experience. When I left the Navy and started working in the private sector, it was a very tough transition because there's a certain level of expectation. There's a certain level. There's certain presumptions that you make that I made early on that really were difficult on my end to manage my own expectations more than anything. Like I was used to a certain kind of student, a certain mindset from a student. I was used to a certain physical adaptability from a student. I was used to a certain kind of attitude and mentality from a student. It was a hard.
I was going to ask. I was going to ask you to share an example of what that is. But a lot of times, coming from such a tight knit community, like you were saying, with that, that brotherhood and that camaraderie and that mindset, and regardless, even to get, as we all know, many people do know, even to get screened properly, to go to BUDS prep, to go to BUDS, to get to that level takes a certain type of individual. So even at that level, you are working with a certain type of individual. When you come out of that, it's a little bit different, and that's something that I've had to struggle with as well.
It's true, but I would say that posed the greatest challenge for me at a professional and personal level.
Okay,
and it was probably the best thing that I could have been thrown at me.
Okay, that's a great mindset. That's a great mindset.
Well, the reason, it's one of those things where. It forced me to change how, number one, I view my new industry. It forced me to reevaluate how I conduct training, how I develop curriculum, how I administer that curriculum.
Okay.
It forced me to rethink what my my mission was. Like back at BUDS, my mission was very simple. It was to support the team community. Right. So at an individual level, did you as an individual support the team mission? Because if you didn't, then you were the problem. Right. In this atmosphere, it's a little bit different. It's not so much about a team mission anymore, although I could make an analogy to create a team mission.
Sure.
It's more about the individuals now. And so that paradigm shift that I went through was groundbreaking for me because it forced me to rethink a lot of things that I was accustomed to. And while I was accustomed to a certain things that were, in my opinion, like hard to, they were the line in the sand, so to speak. I'm not going to give these up. These are the things that make me unique. These are the things that make the programming that we do unique. This is what people will come to. There are other areas that I could actually work on. And so, like I was saying, ironically, the greatest challenge and struggle that I faced turned out to be probably one of the best things that could have happened to me because it has allowed me to connect with students in a way that very few instructors actually can do in this industry. And this industry is a very fickle industry because we have lots of different contingents within this industry. And the fastest growing market, and to be honest, the largest market share of our industry are novices. They're new shooters, first time gun owners, their first time, or, they're beginner license to carry individuals, so they're on a much lower level compared to the other part of our industry, which is more of the professional, or sometimes what I like to reference as a professional student. Like they're a private citizen. They don't have a professional requirement to have this skill level, but they have determined that it is in their best interest. So they move that direction.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So professionals and professional students. So, but if I were to put I have no way of validating these numbers, but my gut tells me that like 95% of our industry are the novices.
Okay.
Now that might change with time as the industry grows. Obviously, the longer those novices stay in the industry, they more likely are to move into the professional realm, that next level, if you will.
Sure.
And the more people that come in the industry makes that even more likely that they will do that.
Yeah.
But right now, I would say like 95% of this industry are those types of individuals. So when you're looking at it from a business model point of view, why would I target like the 5% of the industry where everybody is trying to target? Everybody's like again, when I left the Navy and just started doing this, I didn't have competition for that 5%. It really didn't. I mean, there were great guys in the industry that were doing the same thing that I was doing, but because the industry was so void of our expertise, it's not like we were ever really, our orbits didn't really come into contact with each other. We saw each other at events and major kind of trade shows and whatnot, but it's not like we were in competition with one another. In fact, I would say just the opposite, that we were complementing one another.
Okay. Well, you're doing the right thing now. Yeah, absolutely. By redefining redefining yourself, your target market. You got to do that to survive, And
the reason why I did it was because also for me, it's very important. Like you have to, and you've heard this slogan or phrase before, which is, if you don't love what you do, why are you doing it? And so for me, my passion for what I'm doing is twofold. There's like the personal passion and what enriches me. And then there's that passion when I see a student achieving their goals, or what really is hard to manage is when I have a student that survives a deadly force encounter as a result of something that they got from me. And we have stories for the last, well over a dozen years now. I've had several conversations with students that have had that type of experience. And it's very,
like you don't want that conversation, but at the same time you do. You want the good output of that.
Well, it's important because the student in a lot of cases needs an outlet, needs somebody that they can talk to. It's a very, like when you get into the legal world, it's a very shifting sands kind of thing. So it's sometimes important to have an outlet that they can actually talk about or talk to about certain things. And then the other thing is that they a lot of times validate something that they believed in, but didn't really put as much belief in it. And now they're like, I'm a believer. Oh my God.
That's a come to Jesus moment.
I had that happen. I was actually in a class in like middle of October, I think it was. I was in a class and I was teaching, and we just started. It was a 3-day class. We just started. I think we were like halfway through day 1. So it's Tuesday. And I get a text message from one of my point of contacts with a group that I work with. And he's like, hey, I just wanted you to know I'm sending you an email about a debrief that happened on Sunday. So here it is Tuesday, and this incident happened on Sunday. It was an active shooter incident that a student of mine had responded to. And I was just like blown away. But the belief thing that I was talking about was that they hadn't regularly carried off duty. It had been one of these like shifting thought processes. Today I think I'll do it. Tomorrow I don't think I will. And on that day, he made the choice to actually carry with his family out at dinner. And that's where the active shooter happened. So the feedback that I got was, never leaving home without it. It's like my Amex card, right? Don't leave home without it. That was his come to Jesus moment. It's like, oh my God, because that's something we talk about in classes. I try to tell everybody, I'm like, hey, listen, You can't predict when bad things are going to happen. And if you had that insight when bad things were happening, then you're better off not going there.
Yeah.
If you were that
Damn.
clairvoyant, then you would just avoid those instances altogether. So anyhow, those passions have kind of really helped drive me and continue to drive me.
Yeah. That feedback. Yeah. It's crucial.
Yeah. Well, it is. Currently, I find so much, and it's frustrating, I'm not going to lie, but I find so much, I guess, gratitude from watching students evolve and watching them evolve. Now, in the olden days, it would sometimes take a long time to see that because I would travel and I wouldn't see the student for maybe like every year, sometimes every other year. So to see the growth took a lot longer. So from a professional point of view, you're like, okay, is the material I'm putting out really helping them? Because I'm not able to really evaluate it on a more timely basis. And then about 3 years ago, I started doing work at a much more centralized location where I'm now seeing students on almost like, Jesus, sometimes I'm seeing these guys daily.
Oh, wow.
And I'm able to track their progress through various metrics and measurement tools. And it is so rewarding to see the growth from these students as we kind of go into these new challenges that we're throwing at them. So that really is also really nice because from the curriculum development, which is something that it's one of my strong suits. My college education is in workforce education and development. Okay. So that gives me a lot of depth when it comes to curriculum development. So when I'm sitting there and I'm designing curriculum, like I have a lot more depth to draw from to create curriculum.
Exactly. That's exactly what was going through my head. Yeah. When you get that feedback, the quicker you get feedback, like the quicker you realize you're going down the wrong path, the quicker you can change your trajectory. So the quicker you're getting feedback from all your students, like how much quicker are you able to change your course for the better, right? And be able to get away from that.
It's so true. It's so valuable. And you know, like one of the things that is also very difficult for a lot of guys to accept is that, like, I get that a lot of guys have tremendous amount of knowledge and experience. I mean, there's several guys that have more of each of those categories than I do. But the problem is that you cannot use that solely as the means to deliver material, right? That's what got them into the classroom. That's not what's going to get them back into the classroom. You have to be able to demonstrate, the student has to be able to see that what you're asking them to do is achievable, number one, and then number two, that they can do this on a regular basis. And when they get that positive, like I tell people this all the time, don't put all of your eggs in the positive outcome basket. Put all of your eggs in the positive experience basket, because the two of them are way different. Positive outcome means you pass the class, right? That's how you denote a win. I passed the class. Positive experience means that you went through this, and as you did, you discovered things about yourself. You discovered things about your gear, your technique. You discovered things about other people in the class. And so as a result, that positive experience is like, you know what? I didn't pass, but I liked what was being presented to me. I liked how it made me feel. I liked how I was able to actually make some headway. I may not have passed, but I did good. Yeah. And that is what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get them to come back in, because the biggest problem is that many people don't realize the challenges that they're going to be faced with when you are looking at a deadly force encounter. And so, you know, just getting your license to carry doesn't necessarily qualify you for that. But at the same time, it's the first step in the journey. So I'm thrilled by it. I'm like, you've done what a lot of other people haven't done. So congratulations. That's a big step, but it's just one of many.
Yeah, and that's what it's so good to realize, is when we're headed in those type of directions, whether it's this class, which is amazing and setting people up for success in that manner, but for anything you're doing, like, it's going to take a lot more than the first step. And what I love about your story so much is that there's a lot of good things that you've said. But your transition, even out of the Navy and all of these other things that you've talked about, is you kind of, you said you didn't have much focus on one. You were doing a bunch of different things, but you had at least the peace of mind or the state of mind to realize that you should kind of focus down on one thing. And I think from just hearing your story right now that you were so much more successful for a few reasons, but one of those reasons is because you're able to take all that focus and apply it to one thing. And now, one of the things as well in conjunction with that is I love talking about helping other people. So not only are you going out there doing like, Merc work or whatever, but you're able to come back, you're able to come back and you're able to focus on it really does sound like your true passion. So you made a great decision, and then you're also able to help people at the same time and then teach them these life-saving techniques and a plethora of other things that you're going over.
Well, it's true. The like I said, the funny thing was what I thought was going to be my greatest obstacle or barrier or whatever you want to call it turned out to be my greatest inspiration or
that's so
motivation.
Cool. Yeah, and that's one of the other cool things that I wanted to say is it's so funny. Like that's almost the story of my life. Like something really bad happens and it really sucks in the moment. It does, and it's really bad, and you get through it. I was just talking to somebody at lunch about it today. Like shitty stuff happens, but you get through it, and then a lot of times, even though it doesn't seem like it at the time, if you so choose to learn from it and apply it to your future, a lot of times you come out better on the other end. But if you choose not to just, wallow in self-pity and just, think it's shitty and that it's never going to get any better, you're not going to improve, just like all these things you've been talking about.
Well, it's so true. I mean, the thing that I struggled with, if I had to really kind of put it into terms, was I didn't like the fact that what I had produced wasn't producing the results that I wanted from the students. Like that to me was like a personal affront. I put all this time and energy into creating this curriculum, and then to come to find out that it's not working, and
That's your baby.
In my head, I had this idea that in my head, okay, this is the perfect curriculum. This is the process that's going to get people from A to B easily. But there were assumptions that were probably some liberties that I shouldn't have taken in that. But once I realized what was wrong with the curriculum, I was able to tweak it. And honestly, the program hasn't changed that much. Like that's another thing that is a problem within this industry, is that people are very quick to just throw things on the wall to see what sticks, and then they kind of make it that's their niche. This stuck over here, I'm going to go with this. And part of the reason that they do that is because there's also a disconnect from their ability to really understand what's happening in the first place. Well, why were you not seeing the success that you were hoping for? That was my problem. Like, again, I was upset that I had put all this effort into trying to develop this curriculum. And what it really turns out, it wasn't so much the curriculum that was the problem. It was how I was delivering it, how the instructor staff was delivering it. There's been if you were to look at a schedule of our curriculum back 10 years ago, has it changed since then? Of course it has. It's changed. But really what I feel like has been the fundamental change has been how we interact with the students, right? Because my job as an instructor is very simple. I have to affect behavioral change in you. Okay. So my success rests with your performance. So if I want to be successful in my profession, I have to learn how to make you be successful and how to make you win.
Sounds like leadership 101.
Yeah, well, it is. In a lot of respects, it's so challenging, and that's so funny that you mentioned that, because that's exactly what it is. It's you use the term instructor, but really it's more leader or leadership, because that's exactly what you have to do. And you have to be able. And I could have a class of I'm going to be going to a class here a couple of weeks. I'll probably have about 16 students in that class. I'm going to have 16 different methods of learning.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have 8 different adult strategies that I'll have to use to get through to each of them.
But it's so
right?
good that you recognize that, Jeff. It's so good that, like you said, you didn't change the course. Obviously, the course changed, like you said, over 10 years. But when you were so emotionally attached, like this was your baby, this program, but you were able to step back and be like, well, what am I doing that I need to be doing? Or what am I not doing that I need to be doing? And you just analyzed it. And now you've been at it to your success. Because of all of that, and that you're understanding that. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the DISC profile, but go out and take a DISC profile personality test and see where you fall, and then you better understand where people fall, and you understand that there's different ways that people learn.
So true. And it's been like, that has been like, if I were to identify an area where I geek out, it would be in curriculum development and adult learning.
Okay.
Like those are the two areas that I can sometimes geek out in and study.
Well, you're in the right field.
Like today, like one of the things that I'm putting a lot of stock into nowadays is studying human performance. You know, like again, coming from my background, we had elite level operators. These were guys that from a physical and mental point of view, they could have gone and done. In fact, I know some that did. They could have gone on to the Olympics. They could have gone on to the professional field of football or baseball or whatever the case might be. They were that gifted.
Sure.
And so when I look at things from that perspective, you know, again, that's one of the other disconnects that I have, is I wasn't working with those types of students anymore. I was working with other students that didn't have that same background. So I had to figure out, how do I connect with these students? How do I make it so that these students understand the importance behind the material that I'm providing? Because if I don't get the buy-in from the student, I'm not going to get the student motivated to put forth the effort. Because the problem that we ran into was what we're teaching is not a complex set of skills. I mean, it's a lot easier than maybe trying to fly the space shuttle, but it's still complex. And so having to be able to relay this to our students and get them to understand that became not a problem, but became the crux of everything, if you will. Like, how do I deliver this so that it resonates with you, resonates with you, resonates with you, resonates with you? And that's where that's where I really enjoy it. So like right now, I'm looking at factors that affect performance at that elite level, like not necessarily the elite level, but the higher end of the student spectrum. Like, why am I seeing students that when I put a little bit of pressure on them, they fall apart? What's the reasoning behind that? Like, and I hypothesized, and you know, my wild ass guessing and whatnot, but I started studying more about heart rate, like what is happening at certain levels of your heart rate, like at a certain like I'm used to operating at a much higher level. Like when, like I always tell people this, I'm like, man, if I'm just here sitting down, I mean, like you're gonna get like a okay response. But if my body moves into that mode that I lived in for the better half of my adult life, if it moves into that mode, it's a scary place to be, because that's where things just work so effortlessly, so without seamlessly. They're automated in a sense. So my heart rate, when it's at that level, actually supports improved performance, right? I need to be aroused. My heart rate needs to be aroused to a much higher level than the average person to get peak performance from me. All right. So why were we having problems with other students that were in that same heart rate range, but their performance was all over the place, right? So that's kind of like where I'm geeking out right now. What's happening? How do we manage that?
Well, I would encourage you to look into what I had brought up earlier too, if you're not familiar with it, the DISC, DISC, and look into that. I
definitely will. Actually, I already kind of like wrote a mental note. Because I didn't want to write
do. And feel free to hit me up after this too. But
look into that.
That's helped me. I mean, amongst reading books, people know I'm a huge advocate of How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, I love that book.
By Dale Carnegie. For those who don't know that, definitely read that. But I'm telling you, like, studying the 4 different types of personalities, at least according to this, and obviously it's not 100%, but it's pretty darn close. That's been really cool in helping identify me better, and then my interactions. Like, I had my wife take it. I said, and you have to understand, like, people, you that was you for that many years. You elevate it, at that, you performed at that elevated heart rate, like you were saying, but not everybody's like that. So what you're doing, and again, what goes to your success in the company is that you're able to better identify that. And because you're honestly, and I say this in a good way, you are obsessed with understanding how to get people to work. No, I mean it in all sincerity.
I get it. I totally get it. I do.
Like,
I do suffer from that easily.
And this is your thing. Like, Tricon's your thing, you know, like you should be, or else you wouldn't be successful. So you need to become like that. Like, what gets my company to be successful? Become obsessed with that, and that's how you're going to be successful. And I did want to say, there's so many reasons I wanted to talk to you. And like, one of the things you said way earlier is that you want to set an example for people at your age. Like, and I think I've had people on here, teenagers, I've had people all the way up into the spectrum, and age, I truly believe it's nothing but a number, and it's how you are up here in your head. And the fact that you're getting after it and you're delivering these messages to people is what I love to see out there. And all of these reasons that you so graciously discussed with us is why I wanted to get you on here. And just more than fulfilled everything that I wanted to talk about. And I really do appreciate that. And I'd love to get you on. Yeah, we'll have to talk again and do it when I start repeating guests. Whenever that may be. I think this is like 111. I haven't repeated anybody yet, but one day I will do that, and I'd love to dive into it more, because I love where I really have clutched on to what you said about the personalities, and try to understand that more, because you understand that people learn differently. So I really do appreciate that mindset, and that you're trying to spread that as well throughout your class. But before we get out of here, tell everybody where they can find more about Trident Concepts and you and all of that goodness.
Love that. The easiest thing to do is to visit our website, tridentconcepts.com. And then from there, you can find all of our social media links. It's sometimes easier than trying to remember what my social media handles and names are. But we're on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I do try to engage in dialogue in those formats, but it's kind of hard. It's not always easy.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to get more information about Trident Concepts and what we're doing there.
Perfect.
TridentConcepts.com.
Jeff, I've really enjoyed this. It's so cool hearing about this, and I think a couple of the takeaways that I heard is we kind of touched on already, is just, if you want to do something, go do it, and don't like split up your time between all of these things. And even though one may be lucrative when you're going overseas, and the other one, if you want to do it, just go do it, put your time into it, and then like incredible things will happen. And then if things aren't working, even if they're your baby and you're emotionally attached to them, take a step back and try to look at it objectively, except instead of emotionally, and you're able to do all of that, and that's really cool that you're able to define that. So I'm really appreciative of your time. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your night.
Oh, hey man, thank you very much.